Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Bull. So in this episode, it deals with a journalist named Chloe, who basically is being brought up on basically federal charges, essentially, because she's in the eye, this dating app company called Spark for You that she was writing an article on and saying oh, she stole proprietary information that was trademarked and stuff like that. And so now she's gonna if she gets found guilty, she's gonna be spending 30 years in prison. Because what's crazy is that basically this all started because from the very beginning you can tell she was being manipulated. Because the moment it turns out all the stuff on her that she had downloaded and stuff like that, it's oh my god, obviously it's all pointing to her being stealing trade secrets. It's she was set up from the beginning. I was oh man, someone from Spark for You set her up like that, which turns out not to be the case, but nevertheless, because even Bull from the beginning is oh, I can tell that you're a very honest person, just she is legitimately trying to do her best. Because this all starts because basically there have been women. It started with one woman named Meg. Basically, she went on a date from this dating site, was raped, tried to go to police, tried to go to Spark for You about this situation, but it's oh, the profile disappeared. We can't do much about it. And so the police couldn't do much about it either. And it turns out, Chloe ends up finding out that there are actually other people, even people in the same group as Meg that, been under the same circumstances. And it's holy shit. Because that's what makes this situation so bad. Because she's trying to do a good thing and she's being railroaded it for it. She's being literally thrown under the bus in multiple ways. Obviously, all this potentially going to jail for 30 years, and on top of all of that, her boss, who her editor is her editor Tom is oh yeah, and it's okay, so did you know she was working on what kind of article was she working on? It's now she didn't tell me. And you have Chloe being what, you liar? It's you knew exactly what I was working on. We were literally going to publish it 3 days ago, and the bastard had the audacity to come up to her after her being I'm sorry, it's just it came down from top above. It's if I had done this, oh, so many people would have lost their jobs. It's still, that's such a crappy thing to do, which at the same time says a lot, because you were willing to perjure yourself for this. I mean, be fair, there's that 1% of my brain that's I understand, because you're oh, I'm trying to protect my employees, but I mean, to be fair, that's that 1%. The other 99% is fuck you, you're a terrible person. There might be truth to that, but I think more so than anything, you're trying to protect your own job, because if your staff gets cut in half or whatever, then because that's the whole thing about the journalistic point of view. Is supposed to be kind of, in this particular case, and especially the article she was writing, is all about telling the truth. And that's the sad thing, is she was being shut down for telling the truth. And because she wouldn't even give up her source either, which made this whole situation even harder. But I think it's also because what makes this situation suck even more is because as a journalist, she seeks the truth, and it's the truth doesn't matter under these circumstances when people just outright lie and manipulate things like that. Because even Bull's he doesn't know, he wishes he could do more for her at the time, a point in the episode. He's I don't know what I can do for her. It's I don't know what's worse, that her editor literally lied under oath, or the fact is he told her the truth, and that truth is crushing her. Because it's you believe in the truth being everything, and it's just now the truth is being used against you, because it's well, sadly, yeah, I lied and everyone else is lying. It's just wow, because it's oh, you can summon up the courage to tell her the truth face to face. As long as you weren't in a courtroom under oath, you're fine with telling her the truth then, but you can't do it in front of, so I don't know, just one of those things where it's I get it, pressure from above, but the fact of the matter is, under the circumstances of that story, your journalistic integrity should kick in and be nope, I gotta stand up, especially because you literally working together to get this out 3 days earlier. And it's just sad that she's being sandbagged. But going back to it, we end up finding out that the person behind all this wasn't even someone that worked for, well, technically was. It turns out to be Gary, the CEO, which I love the line from Bull from the very beginning, being never trust a guy in a skinny tie. And then at the end, being I told you, never trust a guy in a skinny tie. Because it turns out they hired this kind of security firm, basically a group of fixers. There's this lady in particular hired to make Chloe think oh, I'm going to be your inside source, when it turns out she doesn't even work there. She works for a different company. And it never came up in the episode, but they were going to get her ex-boyfriend Jamal I'm surprised that didn't come up at all, but it was kind of like, oh, her ex-boyfriend, who she hasn't talked to in such a long time, actually works for Spark for You's competitors, so they're going to try and paint that narrative. Because, like, whether or not you really talked or not, they were still trying to set it up to make, like, oh, she was stealing secrets and stuff like that, and it's just like, man, they were trying to screw her over on every opportunity. What ended up helping, though, was like, Marissa had the idea, like, well, let's bring in some of the people she was writing the article about. And one of the victims on the stand was like, can I talk about the NDA I was kind of forced to sign? And like, Spark for You, because she even tried on multiple occasions. She went to the cops. She tried to go to even Spark for You when it was all said and done, but they made her sign an NDA. It's like, you shut up about this and just we'll kind of make this go away. Just trying to pay her off and everything. That obviously added more validity to what Chloe was saying. I'm obviously kind of understand what case she was kind of involved in and what kind of article she was writing and everything. Because I even like how they had to, Bull and Benny turned it as like, well, the fact of the matter is what she has to say. Yes, it could be used to potentially hurt Spark for You, hence the NDA, but this is a closed courtroom, so that information's not going to leave here, so it's kind of okay. So for it to come out and it's like, yep, the judge is like, yep, totally 100%. I'm like, yes! Small little steps and victories. So ultimately what ended up being their undoing was like the card that Chloe got in, because it's like, well, if it wasn't an insider for Spark for You that gave her the card, it's like, where did it come from? It was the CEO's card. I mean, he did get another card, but they never had to go down that rabbit hole. I guess it's not a situation of, well, couldn't you just check the card for fingerprints? That's where my mind was initially, but I guess it's like, it doesn't really matter in the long run. Because I guess the argument could be like, oh, at some point in time, the CEO, Pat, had his hands on all the cards, I guess is what the argument could be made. Maybe there were no other prints besides her. Maybe, the person that was setting her up did a very, probably did a thorough job, like I said, for that not to even come up. But like I said, maybe in the long run, it didn't matter either, so. But I love Benny at the very end of it being like, oh yeah, like this, and this. And like, oh yeah, that you framed it for it. The judge is like, you will be in content, Benny, if you don't stop. And it's like, oh, the jury must ignore it. And even Liverpool being like, well, the fact of the matter is, yeah, that's pretty hard to do. Like, yeah, because I like that being an aspect of courtroom drama. So it's like, oh yeah, you are supposed to disregard it. It's like, it's super hard to disregard that after that something like that's been said. The moment's kind of putting you. That's kind of the whole point. So. Luckily, Chloe was found not guilty, and Bull was like, the only payment you need to pay me is to publish that article. Obviously, she's not going to go back to her job and get because she even got put on indefinite hiatus too until this was all resolved. And the funny thing is, and it's like, oh, did you know about it? It's like, no, she literally found out that that was her job situation while in court, while her editor was on the stand. And it's like, kind of adds more to the sleaziness, because at the same time he knew he was in the wrong and he just couldn't even outright tell her from the beginning. Even before the courtroom situation, he couldn't even tell her the truth beforehand, So I'm pretty sure there's no going back to that job. Even with everything cleared, it's probably like, nah, you guys, when you have the opportunities, you threw me under the bus, and who's to say you won't feel pressure for someone else and kind of do the same thing in the future. So that was kind of a nice tie up for the story like that. I love the whole time, multiple times throughout the episode, Bull, when Marissa came up with that idea, he's like, oh man, has anyone ever called you a genius? And she's like, no, not never. And he's like, yeah. I mean, I bet it's going to feel great when someone does. And then him being all cheeky like that. And it's like, oh, Marissa came through, her role in that, kind of put that idea out there. He says it again, oh, has anyone ever called you one? She's like, nope, not never, not once. All the little slight tongue-in-cheek between everybody. I also like the conversation about when they figured out oh, Spark for You was behind this huge cover-up. Marissa's like, oh my god, what kind of terrible human being could think up something like that? And Bull's like, well, I'm the one that just started up being the one that kind of figured this out and everything. She's like, oh, kind of has a look like, ugh, yikes. But also in this episode, we had the whole it's kind of interesting. We got the new Cable in this episode. That was this dude named Isaiah. He did the whole thing with the drone and everything, but he couldn't get the messages back like Bull wanted him to. Didn't really know if it was going to be something possible, so he went to Cable for help, which Cable was super oh, don't tell Bull that I helped you, because Bull's, he's going to be so focused on the message coming from me that he's not going to be willing to take this message. Because she has a conversation with Danny, because it's obviously with her FBI arrest, it's getting a job super not easy, especially getting into security, cybersecurity, protection like she would want to, because that's kind of her wheelhouse. So the job search hasn't been good. But she's like, oh, besides going missing everyone, the team, she also misses the work they do because she like felt like it mattered, it meant something, and they help out a lot of people with what they do, and so that's why her main reason for doing this is like, so that what happened with the women from Chloe's article with this whole Spark for You situation never happens to someone else. So it's like that takes precedence over like me getting any like attention from this, especially because it's like, well, maybe Bull won't listen because he is still mad at me, because Bull prior to this, anytime the conversation came up about Cable, it's like, shut that down real quick. Which, interestingly enough, that was also kind of a key element to solving this case too. But I like the little thing at the end, and I was like, oh man, did Isaiah like tell Bull? Did he kind of feel guilty or whatever? It's like, no, Isaiah didn't say anything. And she's like, and Bull's like, oh yeah, the reason why I know is because you just told me. So I was not expecting it, hiring Cable back, which I was like, yes, that's so cool. I thought he was going to kind of chew her out. I thought it was like, okay, I appreciate what you did. Kind of leave it at that. Wasn't expecting him to hire her back. I was like, you want your job back? She's like, yes. He's like, don't you want to think about it? It's like, nice pajamas and walks away. It's like, I'll see you at the office like, well, it was a Monday or whatever. And we're like, that's so good. And you see Cable kind of going, holy crap. And you see her smiling because it's like, yeah, I wasn't expecting her to get her job back. I figured at some point she'd get it back, but I wasn't expecting it to be soon. She wasn't that away that long. They literally found her replacement and now he's being replaced with the original. So I just think I'm so happy because now the entire family's back together and it's like, yeah. So I'm very interested to see like the next case with Cable kind of like back on the team and what happens. I wonder will there be kind of any differences, or has Bull just kind of like taken time off? He's calmed down and it's like, hey, you helped out with this very important case. And so the fact is that you didn't want any glory or attention because it's like, oh, because at the same time, it could be a situation of like, oh, if Cable had admitted that she was behind it, it would have looked good and maybe Bull would have hired her back. But the fact is she kept quiet about it, I think speaks volumes for him. And I think that also speaks volumes about Bull to the extent, well, for him to probably look past everything and he's calmed down and he's like, okay, like I need to give Cable a second chance. She had the best of intentions. Yes, she kind of went about things the wrong way, but she tried to do the best thing. Which I'm so curious. That's still a storyline I'm curious about. The girlfriend that was involved, I forgot her name. Wasn't her name Sarah? Maybe it wasn't. But the girlfriend in that particular case and everything, still never found her. So I'm wondering is that something that's going to come back up or not? Maybe not. Maybe that's just kind of like it's kind of tied in with that whole episode that eventually people will found her and turned her into, I don't know. Maybe, but I kind of get a feeling like there might be more to that, but we'll see. But also going back to why I was like, oh yeah, it kind of says a lot about Bull. It's also because, besides the whole forgiveness thing, it's also like, I think he knows Cable enough because the way Isaiah was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. And then all of a sudden he just does it. And the way he's kind of being cagey about answering how he did. He's like, yeah, I didn't think it was done. So he's like, yeah, it's got to be Cable because Cable does the impossible, So I'm sure like that was kind of like the key signs for him. And just going to talk to her kind of confirmed that. So that was pretty neat. And then finally, another part of this story was the whole situation with Chunk and his daughter Anna. Like obviously she's coming out kind of like testing out college, looking at the colleges and stuff like that, which is kind of interesting because she's the one that kind of sparked everything with Chloe by introducing her to Chunk and everything. And obviously things are still a little awkward and everything, but it wasn't until they had sat down for dinner that the real things came out because like, you have Anna being like, oh, don't try and be a dad now. It's like, you haven't been a dad for such a long time. And Chunk kind of trying to explain himself. And it's kind of, it's kind of interesting learning. It's like, oh, at the time, it's like you're 17 and 18. Around that age, you kind of think you know everything. You think you kind of figured it all out when it's like, no, you haven't. You haven't figured jack squat out about yourself. Because, Chunk, who he was then, would have never thought he is who he is now. It's just like, oh, like the whole being gay situation. Because it's like, at that time, it's like, especially with being, at that age, at that time, where he grew up, all of that combined, it's like you try not to stand out, you don't want to be different. So obviously he cared about Anna's mom, but it's what wasn't until much later on that he found out about himself. And even then, like Anna's mom never told him she was pregnant. It wasn't until much later on that he found out. Like it wasn't around the time Anna was 6. It was like, oh, I found out your mom was pregnant with you. So. And it's like, well, why weren't you in my life after that? So, well, because it's like, you had already created this flow, a life where it's like, oh, you didn't need a dad in the picture. And it's like me coming into your life at the time you were 6. It's not really my place to have told you that. And it's like me and your mom made that decision to like, oh yeah, that I'll just be Uncle Chunk, which is like, for Anna, it's like, that was still a decision you shouldn't have made. Like, you know, because I mean, it's a situation where like you understand why Chunk did what he did, but at the same time, it's a situation like, I mean, at the same time, it's like it's not up to anyone. Like at the time, it wasn't really Anna's decision either, because it's like you're a kid and your family's just trying to do what was best for you, and like I said, it would just complicate things a lot. I mean, it's not like it didn't make anything less complicated, but hey, you're older now, so he felt like, you know, Trump felt like, okay, this is the appropriate time to tell you, and that's what I'm saying, like the whole debate, because it's like, well, some people might feel like you need to tell them immediately. Like if you adopt a child, you should always let your child know that they're adopted from the beginning, because the last thing you want that happen is like when the truth comes out, whether they discover it themselves or you finally tell them because you think they're old enough. It doesn't change how you feel about them. I feel like, I mean, not feel like, just, I know that is the case. Like if you love your child, whether they're adopted or not, that should be the focus. But you should also let them know, like, hey, I'm not your biological mom, but I'm loving you, biological mom or dad, but I love you just the same because you are mine. Whether we're related by blood or not, you are mine and you'll always be mine, you know? Because I think it will ease, you know, a child's mind. I mean, like I said, this is just from my way of looking at it, my way of thinking on it. But, you know, not everyone's going to feel that way about it. Because at the same time, like, who am I to tell someone how to, like, raise their child? And that's kind of the same conversation here. Like, obviously, things are a little awkward between them still, but they are getting better. Chump being like, I don't want you to close any doors just because you have problems with this city because you associate it with, you know, me being here and everything. It's like, you know, if you want to keep talking, that's cool. We can do little by little. Or if you want to chalk it all, I completely understand. So turns out she's not closing doors. But like I said, it is a situation where they are etching for. Like the last episode, it kind of made it seem like, oh, things are kind of awkward, but they're good. But now it's like, well, it's a situation where it's like, I shouldn't be too surprised. Like obviously it's a lot to kind of process and take in. So probably handling it the best she could. And you know, I think, like I said, at the very least, it does seem like things are going in a very good direction. So that's something we can take away from it. So a very all around positive episode in the sense of, a lot of good came about it, you know, so. Except for the terrible shit that took place in the episode and like the terrible shitty aspects of the episodes and everything Spark for You related. But aside from that, just overall story ending wise, like everything ended it good. So that's good. Do note there will not be an episode of Bull next week, but there will be one the week after next on the 27th. So keep that in mind. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.